All right. Happy Friday, everyone. And we are back again with another episode of Learning Tech Talks, where we're exploring the landscape of learning technology, cutting through the fluff and demystifying all that good stuff so we can help you go digital the right way. And so today I'm joined by Sam Herring, and we're talking about all things collaborative online learning. He's from Intrepid, and we're going to see how Intrepid's making that happen. So for those of you who are joining us live, go ahead, give us a thumbs up, share the post, tag in somebody who'd benefit from the conversation. And while you're at it, comment in and let us know where you're joining from. So I'm streaming from Waukesha, Wisconsin, which for those of you who don't know, which I wouldn't blame you because it's not a town that probably pops up in your list of places, but it's a suburb of Milwaukee. So I'm in Wisconsin. Sam, how about you? Where are you joining from?
I am streaming in from Seattle, Washington today.
All right. How's the weather up there today?
It's beautiful. It's sunny. It's looking just great outside, sunny, and looks like it's gonna be mid 60s today. Nice day.
Okay, so you have nice weather. We've had this weird heat bubble that has just crushed us. It's been in like the 90s. The humidity's been just the worst. And add to the fact that our air conditioner went out 2 days ago. So of course, right at the time when it's the absolute hottest, it goes out. Now we got it fixed yesterday, so thankfully everybody's a little less crabby. Nobody's sweating anymore. It's actually not too bad. So perfect. Well, all right. Before we get into the conversation of online collaborative learning, we've got the unrelated question that we always have. All right. And for those of you who are watching, you can contribute too. Comment in and ask this. But I'm curious for me, Sam, what household chore do you actually enjoy?
This is an easy one for me, actually.
That's what you said. You said this is going to be easy. You didn't even have to think.
Yeah, this could be easy. And there's actually I give two answers to this. I give the household chore I like today, and the household chore that I did as a child. But I'll answer the question, which is I actually really enjoy doing the dishes.
Doing the dish, like hand washing, not just like rinsing and putting in the dishwasher.
Well, the combination, right? You got to do your
combination.
I enjoy cleaning up after dinner. I'm a little OCD, and my wife reminds me of this, right? So I like to make sure the kitchen is all clean. But actually, I think I like it too because it's that moment when I can just sort of have a little me time, just kind of like think, just, kind of put some music on.
Okay, so this isn't a collaborative project then.
No, not a collaborative.
Okay, this is Sam. Sam stays in and Sam takes care of the kitchen.
Yeah, it's a self-directed experience. It's more of an asynchronous.
it's an asynchronous chore experience that we're talking about here. Okay, everybody leaves.
Right now, I get it, but yeah.
Okay, all right. I was gonna say because when it comes to washing the dishes, for me, it brings up memories back when I was a kid. We didn't have a dishwasher, and my brother and I, he was 10 years younger than me, but we were always tasked with, we had to do the dishes. Mom made dinner, dad grilled or whatever, and we had to do the dishes, and we would fight. We'd throw water at each other, but we had fun with it. So I would agree that as a kid, I don't know that I thought of it as a favorite household chore, but I can see that. All right. And then, so for me, this one, I actually had to think about this a little bit because I actually like cleaning up the kitchen too. I like folding laundry, but if I had to pick a favorite, I would say vacuuming. I love to vacuum. I have no idea why. For me, similar to you, I think it's right. I get in my headspace. I'm sitting there just vacuuming. I like the look of the carpet after you vacuum. There's something very clean about vacuuming the house. So some people have added they love laundry. Jack Sylvester, he's in your camp. He's in your camp filling the dishwasher. So dishes is definitely something that is a common theme here. So, all right. Well, lots of household chores. Either way, Anthony says maybe you can come to his house. So you can come clean up the kitchen.
Seattle area.
There you go. If
I'll be there, right?
Exactly. If the learning tech thing doesn't work out, there's always the backup. You can come take care of things at people's houses. Awesome. Well, and the other thing, unrelated to learning tech, though, you did share with me before we came live. You have big plans for this weekend, right? So what is that?
Yeah. So Christopher and I were chatting early, and so I grew up in a household with dogs. It was you've heard of like the crazy cat family. Like we were the crazy dog family.
Okay.
And my family raised and showed Irish Wolfhounds, but we had probably, I don't know, 10 or 12 different breeds over my childhood. So I think it's not an exaggeration to say that we had
at the same time though, 10 or 12
breeds, maybe 4 or 5, you know.
Okay.
We would have in my childhood, we easily had over 50 dogs over the course of my childhood, you know. So as a child, my chore, I don't say it's my favorite chore, but I was getting up every day cleaning kennels. So maybe that gave me a little bit of spit polish and grit.
Yeah.
But yeah, what we're doing tomorrow actually is in my family, we don't have a dog now, and my kids remind me of that like every day. And so
especially now that they're home all the time to remind you every day.
The coronavirus has changed everything, and we're now we're getting the puppy tomorrow, so it's pretty exciting.
Okay, yeah. And how old are the kids?
The kids are 12 and 8, so a sixth grader Monica and a second grader Malcolm, and so getting an interesting view into, like all of us, into digital learning through the lens of
yeah.
12-year-old. Yeah.
Okay. Well, at that age, I'm sure they're very ecstatic to be getting a dog. They know, right? This isn't going to be like a surprise. We're here. We're picking up a dog.
No.
Okay.
No.
All right. So you're going to hear about it until you're driving home.
Yeah, we got the hourly countdown, the countdown clock going right now. So it's something else. Yeah.
All right. Well, very exciting. That would be a fun way to spend the weekend, I'm sure, even though it will be no shortage of busyness, because, you know, kids love to get dogs. And then it's like you have to take care of it. And it's like, oh, well, yeah, Dad, can you do that?
That's right. We've had those conversations. We'll see how it goes.
Okay, we'll see how it goes. Yeah, TBD. All right. Well, so let's jump into this, because we're talking about collaborative online learning, right? Whatever we want to do. But before we get into that, we're talking about Intrepid. And one of the big things that I always like to do with this is just really help define, for people who may not know what Intrepid is, what is it and where does it play in the space of digital learning?
Yeah, thanks. So Intrepid is what we call a collaborative learning platform. And what that means is we're a platform that brings together learners, often in a cohort, that travel through a common learning experience together over time. So think of it as a time-bound release of learning that can happen over a period of days or weeks or even months. If you can extend that time horizon out as long as you like. So you've got the power of a social cohort learning together. There's a relentless focus on applications. So it's not just content push. I mean, of course, there's all kinds of ways to consume content, videos, podcasts, documents, and so on. But it's really that focus on application through missions and projects and workplace challenges, because that's how we learn. We learn through practice. We learn through reflection. We learn through connecting with one another. So that's what the platform does. It strings together that learning journey for a group of learners. And primarily, as you and I have talked, Christopher, we see our competitor or the classroom, really. I mean, it's like, what can you do in the classroom digitally, online? And today, our competitor is on the ropes. They're out of business right now. So we're getting a lot of interest in, what people are very open to new ideas for how to engage and drive collaborative learning experiences digitally.
Okay. So in the bigger, right, if you were to put it on the space of things, right, you've got your kind of consumption platforms, I guess, at the higher end, where like your LXP, things like that, the portals people are going through, those types of things. Then at the granular level, you've got your maybe content objects, and you're kind of playing in between that, while at the same time bringing in people, kind of creating almost this micro experience. I think that when Tim and I were talking about it, I kind of said it almost feels a little bit like a boot camp type environment, an insulated digital boot camp where you're bringing people together to learn collaboratively through something, but it's not an all-inclusive portal, correct?
Yeah, that's right. So there's the portal, and you're going to have, most enterprises are going to have a launching off point where learners find learning, register for learning, access learning, whether that's curated or assigned or what have you. And that could be the LMS.
Yeah.
It could be LXP, right? We integrate with LMSs. We integrate with Degreed, right? So, but those are ways to get to learning. They're not learning themselves, right?
Right.
So when you get to Intrepid, you are entering a learning journey. That often starts, with on a certain date and travels through time together. We also support asynchronous experiences as well. But I think the power and the greatest differentiation in the experience is when you go through that learning journey together. I talked with Josh Burson early on when he was creating that slide that I think is burned into all of our brains.
Yeah, the ecosystem one that literally everybody could probably recite.
Exactly. And he had the first version of it, though. He had LXP and he had us in there. And I was like, Josh, we're not LXP, right? And so he created a new space. He called it the learning experience layer. And he had the LXPs, the Degreeds and Edcasts and so on. And it's time Pathgather. And then he put us in program delivery platform.
Okay.
It doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, but it gets at the concept that our customers and partners use our platform to create their high stakes digital learning experiences, courses, programs, whatever you want to call that. But it is a specific experience rather than I'm going to weave my way through content, self-directed, and resources and so on.
Well, that's where, to me, learning experience platform can be really confusing because technically you experience learning through a lot of different mediums. And so when you say this is the learning experience platform, it's like, well, am I actually doing the learning here? Am I not? Am I creating? Right. It's a lot of different things. So I'm with you on that in terms of the clarification. And I think that's the part that a lot of people who are new to this space are just starting to tread into it. They're trying to figure out, well, what's the difference? How do I actually work with this? So my next question on this though is, so obviously COVID, right? You talk about your big competitor right now is probably the classroom, the virtual classroom, but Intrepid didn't come out when COVID came out, right? So it's been around for a bit. So when you were looking at this, how did Intrepid come to be? Where did you say, like, you know what, this is what I'm seeing? It's a gap. It's a problem. We can do better than that.
Yeah. So we had kind of an interesting story. We actually had a large services business, learning services business that provided consulting, project work, and even kind of selective outsourcing, and under the same name, under Intrepid Learning Solutions at the time. Okay. And so we had this bee in our bonnet. We thought, God, there must be a better way to do digital learning that is experiential, that's applied, that's collaborative. And we have these, we have Facebook, we have LinkedIn, we have all these tools. And why isn't anything in corporate learning looking like that or feeling like that or can kind of drive that consumerization type of feel? And so my colleague Sanjay, who's on the stream right now, he and I thought,
who also likes dogs, by the way.
Oh yeah, Sanjay, yeah, absolutely, and I'm gonna have to get some tips, get a refresh. And so we got this idea. We're like, well, what if these things called the MOOCs could actually solve business problems?
Okay,
and had like better finish rates than 5%. Like there's a lot there, right? But this idea captured us of like learning at scale, add collaboration in, because if not to get all geeky here, but like in the MOOC world, the what we think popularly of the scale MOOC, just putting a video out and having lots of people take it, that's called an X MOOC. But there was another derivative of MOOC called an original MOOC called a C MOOC, which was a community MOOC, which is really a way to just put a topic out and let people connect. So we were thinking, like, if we get X plus C together, scale plus community, and drive a learning experience like that could be powerful. So that was the idea. And we literally started off with like a couple of slides and went and talked to some of our services customers. Like, what do you think of this value proposition? And they're like, yeah, that sounds cool. So we started building. That's how we started.
Okay, very cool. And so in that sense, we talked a little bit about some of the use cases where people are digging into this. And I think I go back to the fact before we came on, we were talking about the fact that it's not when things went south at the beginning of this year, there was kind of this urgent need to say, hey, we delivered a lot of things in the classroom. Now we can't, because like you said, COVID was
Yeah.
the silver bullet, if you will, for the classrooms. Like, well, it ain't happening anymore. And so there was this demand to say, well, we need to deliver it virtually. And in the firefighting mode, a lot of times what had to be done was, well, let's package up our stuff. Let's zip it over into Zoom or WebEx or whatever platform, and let's deliver it the same way, which from a user experience standpoint, I would say is painful, right? Can be very painful. So how now are people using this now that we're kind of moving back into this strategic world? How are they rethinking the virtual classroom, and how is Intrepid helping with that then?
Yeah, I mean, so there was a great piece that came out in EDUCAUSE in March, and they these were academic learning technologists, and they were really concerned that students in this case, would have a bad experience with online learning or
There's a
virtual
huge
learning.
concern about that.
Huge concern, because they knew what was happening. Like you're shoveling lectures into a platform, and you've got faculty who've never done this before,
Yep.
driving this. And they're like, whoa, red light, caution. And so they put out a piece, and basically the piece just said, there's a difference between emergency response teaching, which we understand, there's a global pandemic going on here, and thoughtfully, intentionally designed online learning. Full stop. That's it. And so that's the message that we're talking about as well. It's the same thing in training. I mean, we get it. When the world shuts down, you got to push your stuff into a virtual classroom. I saw painful kind of questions going in various forums, like, "Hey, I've got this 3-day leadership program. I'm thinking of like, how long should the breaks be during the day when I run my 8-hour session?" I'm like,
oh, I know,
that, right? So again, like, let's have some grace. We understand in an emergency situation, you got to do so you just move on. But now that we're kind of pulling out of that, we have the space to say, okay, how do I do this differently? What's the highest, best use of a synchronous moment? As you said, Christopher, it's not lecturing. We don't need to dial in at the same time for a lecture. That can be captured on video, on a podcast, on a document, in various ways. And then you use the synchronous moments for coaching, for Q&A, for discussion. And you drive a continuous learning experience through spaced learning that we know through research is a superior way to learn, and people retain at a much greater rate. And then we apply. So we're thinking of it as a digital blend concept.
Okay.
Not virtual shouldn't have a place or live learning shouldn't have a place. It's that you think about it surgically. Where is the best use of it? It's not delivering lectures.
No. Well, and this is where sometimes I do feel like it's easy to get a little defensive because this challenges your identity. If you've been a facilitator, if you've been delivering courses, you get attached to your content, right? You get attached to your content, you get attached to some of these things. And as a result, right, you can get a little territorial when the thought of, oh, we need to move this into a digital format can feel a little bit like, well, what's my role in this anymore? Are you saying what I was doing wasn't adding value? And my take on that is absolutely not. In fact, we should be using the skills that you have, which is the ability to, like you talked about, connect, answer questions, drive conversation, right? Bring people in, focus your energy on that, not standing in front of a PowerPoint delivering messages, because quite frankly, it's the worst. I mean, people sometimes get frustrated when I say this, but it's the worst mechanism for delivering information, right? Because it's a one directional. Everybody has to be at the same pace, which we all know people consume information differently. They take longer. They have different paces. It's not the best way to do it. So it's not saying what you did was bad. It's like, well, do it better and invest your energy on some of these other things.
Yeah. And what I would say to those facilitators and experts is, like, it helps you scale. Like,
right.
You can now accomplish share your expertise in those synchronous moments, but also the asynchronous experience or semi-synchronous experience where you can moderate. You can moderate forums. You can do listening at scale, pulling insights out from discussion forums, from assignments that you see come in, and then provide the highest value feedback, things like, hey, here are the trends that I'm seeing across. Here's some additional resources that I recommend because of what I'm seeing here. Because of what I'm seeing, I'm going to tee up this next conversation. And you could be then doing that across multiple cohorts, right?
Yep.
You can't do that if you're just delivering content all the time.
Exactly. Right. It's about focusing on the higher order activities versus just the pure raw delivery of content. Yeah. Well, and going back to the point that you talked about with this kind of deconstructing what is the classroom, things like that, that's a big part of it. And just as an example of, I think there's opportunity for us to do this in learning. I think there's opportunity for us to do this right now with COVID going on and the need to do this from a business standpoint. Just as an example, a week and a half ago, something like that, my best friend was going to get married and we had to switch it. And so we actually had to deconstruct what about weddings, right? Are the parts that are important live? What are the parts people like? What do they not like? And actually break it down to its fundamental things so that then we could say, how do we do this in the digital world and make the most of it? And I think sometimes where I see this go south is we get locked in the box of, okay, so we did this in the classroom. We ran this one activity in the classroom, or we delivered content this way, or it was 8 hours long. So now we're moving it digital. How do we make 8 hours engaging? And that's the wrong question to be asking.
That's right. That's right. And I've heard, I had a old partner who asked, like, she was moving to digital, and the relentless question was, what are we giving up? What are we giving up from the classroom? And then she said, well, let's flip the question, actually. What did we give up for years by having the classroom? Well, let's see. We forced people to come together at a certain time, so we eliminated any idea of spaced learning, right? Yep. When it comes to human skills, turning to your neighbor and having a difficult conversation, that's just completely made up and fictitious, right? Like your role playing, sure, okay, but what if you took skills that you learned into the real workplace and actually applied the real skill, right. And then brought back and reflected on that? What did that mean for me? Connect with your peers and to share on that. So, we kind of need to flip our thinking a little bit too. And I'm not saying like that there aren't things that are, really powerful about being face-to-face and together and learning together. That's not my point. No. Because a lot of our customers use our platform, in
conjunction.
Yeah, in conjunction, exactly. But it's just like, let's just kind of maybe think about our biases a bit and reflect on those.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that Alex brought up, and I agree, you made the comment, right? Listening at scale, especially like with everything going on right now. I think the ability for us to invest our time and energy in bringing people together and listening, right? That allows us to adapt and actually personalize something that before was very, very, very difficult to personalize because our attention was split on so many different things that our time wasn't there to be able to actually listen and hear where people were and what their experience was. Because at the end of the day, when you think about it, people are coming with their own experiences, their backgrounds. They aren't empty boxes, right? That we just need to fill with things. They have their own perspective.
Yeah, I actually did a LinkedIn post kind of leading up to this session this week, and I was reflecting on what we're all going through right now as a country and a nation in the aftermath of George Floyd's death, and the protests, the concerns that we're all feeling. And I thought, how does that relate to this conversation? And I thought, it does, because when we think about what we need to be doing with each other right now in this country, it's listening. And if we have a learning experience, well, too many of our digital learning experiences are about talking. They're about pushing content out. And so it can't be a one-way conversation. It needs to be first about listening. It needs to be about reflecting. It needs to be about planning, taking an action. It needs to be about applying, and practicing new behaviors. Skills, yes, but in this moment, behaviors are what matters. And so that is really what we do. I mean, that is what the workflows, the tools, the experience of Intrepid does. And so I think it's incredibly relevant, and we have a history of a lot of success working on developing human behaviors skills, facilitation skills, listening, communication. That's a very popular use of the platform. And a lot of times organizations come into that being, that can't be done. That can't be done.
I've heard it.
No way,
right? We can't do this outside the classroom. You're like, yes, you can.
And then people go through it and they're like, wow, I think that was actually better.
Yeah. It's funny. I actually had, and I've been challenged with that in the past too, right? This is a topic, or this is a program we run, or XYZ reason, right? This is the reason. And there's just no way that you can do this virtually. And, if literally all you're trying to do is take the thing and move it from one box to the other, I would 100% agree with that. But one exercise that I've done in the past is, so like, again, you got to lead the horse to water, because sometimes if you come in and just go, no, we're going to do that, then defenses go up, everybody's panicking. But taking the time to say, all right, well, let's map it out both ways, right? Let's talk about how we would do this in a live, synchronous, right, traditional method, and then let's just also, just for fun, let's map how this could work in this other environment where we remove all the barriers, we remove the rules and things like that. And let's see where we come with. And almost universally, to what you just said, by the time we get to the end, people end up looking at it and going, wait, that one's better, right? That was actually we should actually do that. And you're like, well, yeah, right. That's because we all know that actually works better. So I love that, this actually empower. Now, the one follow-up question to this, because you're talking about some of this, there is still content. And I think that's one thing that, people can kind of forget, that it's like saying that you're doing this isn't just about eliminating content and saying, no, there's no content. It's about using the live time to not go through content, use the live time to solve problems, discuss, listen to one another, share with each other.
Yeah.
Is the content something you have to bring in? Is there content creation capability within the tool? How does that work?
Yeah. So it's there's content that's created outside the platform. So you can, shoot a video and upload that, or an audio file, or a short e-learning package, or a document. But then there are content items that can be authored in the platform. So simple context tiles, or assessments, or probably the most powerful are the assignments, the mission, the project. I mean, let me know. Like, I can pull something up too and show. Sometimes a picture's worth 1,000 words. If that makes sense. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, and we'll dig into that. One question that came up that I can't see who it is, but they asked about the comment you made in terms of helping promoting, like, how do you see some of these, capabilities being able to embrace and broaden diversity in the workplace?
Yeah. So from a content perspective, we have multiple partners right now who have built programs on Intrepid focused specifically on unconscious bias and diversity and inclusion. So, for example, Deloitte has a whole series of programs they've built with our platform. The brand that they've gone to market with is called Adept Pro.
Okay.
So basically, it takes the expertise from their practice areas, and Deloitte, not surprisingly, has a phenomenal practice in diversity and inclusion. And so they have a program on unconscious bias that I believe the whole firm has taken at Deloitte, and then they've rolled that out with different clients as well. We have other partners like Talent Dimensions that has created programs on diversity and inclusion. So from a content perspective, that is certainly being done. From an experience perspective, I think that's where the power comes in, beyond just delivering content, especially on the topic like diversity and inclusion, because it is fundamentally about self-reflection, about sharing and connecting with others, sharing your experiences, listening to other experiences, working together in a small team. For example, like, I'm reading and talking a lot in real time, as we all are right now, about small groups in the workplace being organized to have authentic conversations, authentic and vulnerable conversations with one another. So those possibilities can happen as well.
Well, and what's interesting about that is and where I see that just from a pragmatic standpoint, where I think this can, whether we're talking about diversity, whether we're talking about all sorts of different topics, when you look practically, what happens a lot of times in kind of the traditional model, you have an agenda of things you need to get through, right? You've got your content list of things you want to get through. And inevitably, conversation, things happen, there's distractions. So your time starts getting pinched. And to me, that's where it goes south, because then what do you trim back on? What are the things that you miss out? You shorten these important things of talking, having authentic conversations, actually digging into the problems, because, well, we've got to make sure we get through X, Y, Z. And so you're actually stripping the real value of that live time out in order to actually be able to get through it. So I think getting to that point, that's where you're taking the best of both worlds and bringing them together.
And it also connects back to that comment about listening at scale that I made too, and someone commented on. And there's some really interesting ways to approach that. So if you imagine, let's imagine a 6-week program that you've rolled out, and you've got your content outlined for that, and you've built. You could even imagine building like the content for week 1 and 2, and you just got the outline for the future weeks. And that could be intentional. You're not just like waiting to the last minute to finish your course, but you could launch the program with week 1 and use listening at scale to inform the design of the future weeks intentionally, right? Because you have certain questions, you have certain experiences that you want to listen to the cohort and the group that's going, the learners, in order to inform where you take the experience. So that's that power of the flexibility and the listening, and making it not just X scale but C community. Really taking seriously both of those aspects.
Yeah. And well, Stacy brought up a good point, and I think this is one that goes back to what you talked about. And again, it's not the technology necessarily unlocks this. Technology enables it, which is, instead of the D&I concepts having to be their own standalone course, it's more, hey, you know what? We can incorporate that into a course on leadership skills, or a course on how to be a more empathetic, basically anything we do, because now the discussion can be very authentic with the group of, what does this actually mean to you? How are you applying that? What challenges are you facing? Because the reality is, based on backgrounds, based on organizations, those challenges will change. And so this is an actual opportunity to bring that to light by, instead of, I think Gary said it earlier, right? Instead of us having to be the knowledge spewers, right? It's more, let's learn from each other. Let's learn together. So I think it's an important piece. So on that one, what kind of, I guess, just from a time standpoint, because I'm curious, as you work with organizations, it's easy. Let's say somebody comes and says, hey, we've got this program, we want to move into the virtual world, the digital world. I think some people, this may be new territory for them. Not maybe, it is new territory for them. And that natural tendency is to say, well, this is what we did before. Let's just think about, right, we'll take these slides and we'll chunk it into this module, and these slides, this module, right? And it all comes together. How do you help with that kind of mindset shift? Is that something that, as you work with a client, you're actually helping them through that transition? Because obviously you've done it a lot. And so for a lot of people, this is new territory.
Yeah. And I think this is where our heritage, coming out of a services background, helps us. And by the way, just to finish that part of the story, like we end up so believing in what we were doing with collaborative learning technology, that we sold that services business to Xerox and became an independent company. And then eventually Intrepid was acquired by VitalSource about almost 3 years ago. So at any rate, we have this services DNA as and value as part of our team. And we see a big part of our client success is working with them to create program 1. Like let's go side by side, roll up our sleeves, and work together to create this first program. And we call our team the Learning Experience Design Team. They take an agile approach So it's like all the waterfall, kind of approaches to instructional design, alpha, beta, all that
All the
stuff.
cool
Like,
buzzwords that we use. Yeah.
yeah, and then like 9 months later, you might have a module. That's out the door, right? So, so we just kind of jump in and we start scaffolding. We build the experience in the platform. It's not like you do some kind of outside the platform and then convert it into the platform. It's like all being done in real time.
Okay.
And we're introducing, our customers and partners to our tools in real time. So we love it when they come with some content. That's great with an outline. But you can kind of create that scaffolding and then fill in where your gaps are easily once you've got the narrative arc of the learning experience built.
Okay. So it's not, to clarify then, Intrepid isn't necessarily just you buy this thing off the shelf and then you're left to, it's kind of an experience as part of this. Am I understanding that right? It's like, yeah, you're buying the technology, and as part of that, we're helping you through, actually bringing that technology to life.
Yeah, that's right. Our goal is to teach our clients to fish. Right now, in response to COVID, we're not charging our new clients for that service, and we're doing it virtually. So that's a real value, because we just we want to make it easy for people, because everybody's trying to switch to digital right now, and we think we've got something valuable to add, so we want to make it easy for people.
Okay. And I think it's an important thing that to do this well, I think sometimes we get so caught up in the let's just get it done, right? Let's just move things digital. And the risk we run, and I've said this a couple times before, is I feel like in L&D right now, we're a little bit positioned to take a moonshot, right? All eyes are on us in many regards.
Totally.
A lot of people are leaning on us going, what are you going to do? And we have a unique opportunity to land on the moon and be a hero. If we're not careful, we could shoot right past it and fly into the sun and completely destroy things. Now that's pretty post-apocalyptic, but I think it's one of those things where it's important that, yes, there are things we need to move fast on and just kind of put out those fires, but at the same time, be thoughtful and strategic about, we don't want to have an environment where when things are done, people go, see, digital learning really doesn't work because it was a terrible experience. Like, well, that wasn't really digital learning's fault.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, let's not confuse emergency response training with intentionally designed online learning. And I couldn't agree more with you, Christopher. Like, this may be the best time to innovate in learning in our career right now. And the conditions, as mind-blowing as they are, as challenging as they are right now, people want change, and they're open to change. And I think there's a sense of grace to some extent as well from the learner saying, like, yeah, hey, I'm willing to try new things. We're not hearing like, oh, that's the way we've always done things. That's out the door. So now,
in many cases, it literally is out the door. You
exactly. So now's the moment. And there's I'll just tell this quick anecdote, which I heard, as a quick story, which reflects this to me. Like, I was talking to a friend of mine who's written a book on the subscription economy. And she was saying, like, Sam, let me tell you about my mom. So my mom's like in her 70s, and she's not a digital native, right? And she'd love to like meet her friends for coffee. She loved to go shopping at the store every week. She loved to go to the yoga studio. And she said, okay, then COVID hits, right? Guess what? Instacart for shopping, Zoom meetings for coffee hour, and then some kind of platform, Zoom or whatever, to do online yoga. And she's loving it. She's loving it. And the question is, she loves it so much, what will she go back to? What will she go back to? Maybe she'll go back to some things and the whole future will be different. But that's a parallel. We need to think about, like, our world's just been completely turned upside down. We're not going back to this whole, like, we're going back to normal. I
actually don't think we should. I think it would actually be a disservice if we did. So on that, and a question came up I want to talk a little bit about, and then somebody actually said, I'd love to actually see Intrepid, which we talked about doing that. So let's get ready to actually show a little bit of what that does. But one of the questions that came up was, right, and this does come up a lot where I see this like, well, but there are things in person is important versus you can't do everything digitally. I think the answer to that is it's less of a, hey, which one is better? It's about reaching people where they are. And I think that's what's exciting about technology. And just as a little story, there was one organization I was in, we had a really phenomenal onboarding program. And it was in person. And I remember proposing that we needed to transform it digitally. And people freaked out because they thought it's working so well. Why would we do this? And I said, well, but it's working so well for the 60% of people who can be in person, but there are 40% who can't. It's not that they don't want to. It's not that it doesn't work. That 40% gets nothing. Yeah. So how do we actually augment things to say it really shouldn't matter if people are in person or not? It should be a seamless experience. And I think that's where, as you think about these things, it's less about saying, well, aren't there things we have to do in person? Sure. If it works, do it in person, but also think about how do you include somebody who maybe can't, there could be a million reasons why they can't. And I think that's the part where it's like, let's not choose sides. Let's just say, how do we make an extraordinary experience for people no matter where they are? And I think that's where, the technology can help us do that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's like, and that's what, the lessons we've seen here with MOOCs and other programs at scale. It's like, the reach and the people that it's now including is phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal. And the data coming out with, the number of learners hitting Coursera and Duolingo are just mind blowing. But I do think too that those are delivering content at the end of the day. And I think I hope, Shraddha, I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I apologize if I'm not, but I think you ask a really good question, and this is not an either or. This what you're getting at here, Shraddha, is the idea of the blend. Whether in the old world, pre-COVID, that would be blend around a classroom experience. In the new world, it can be blending around synchronous experiences. So absolutely, it's not just async. It's not just semi-synchronous. When I say semi-synchronous, by the way, sometimes you're like, "What is he talking about?"
You're making up a new word.
Yeah. So semi-synchronous, all it means is it's a digital experience that's time bound. You've got to start, week 1, week 10, and you're traveling through that experience together on the rough same schedule, but not within a particular week. Doesn't mean Shraddha and Susan and Bob and I are all in at the same exact time. Like, we're working on our work at a time, we're in a discussion post at different times, but we're on the same schedule.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's just it, right? Technology is allowing us not to have to choose. We can say yes and to everything. Bob, I see you're on here, so you'll appreciate the yes and plug, because it's yes and. You know what? If people are in person, great. Let them collaborate in person and they can do their portion. For the people who aren't, great. They can collaborate digitally, and we just need to think about them both collectively and then pull them together in a seamless experience, which I think is where we want to go. So let's pull it up. Yeah, if you want to pull it up, so that Susan knows that we saw her and heard her. Let's take a look at what one of these experiences actually looks like, and I'm sure that's going to bring up some questions for people who are watching. I know it will for me as well. So that we can actually see, hey, all right, you're taking this program, you're taking this experience, this boot camp, whatever you want to call it. And then let me bring this in here. So let's pull this into the stream. Talk to me about what are we looking at here?
Are you seeing my screen okay?
I am, and everybody else says yes.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to share a really simple one and go through some concepts. We could do, I could tell another one with Microsoft. It's got a great business outcome story, but this one is really accessible as a good example to start with. So this is a course we just finished. This was called Design for Collaboration Using the Collaborative Platform. A little meta there, I acknowledge. But this was kind of our idea to give back to the workplace learning community, practice what we preach. Honestly, our learning experience design facilitator, face of the course, went through it. He's like, hey, I've got some feedback for our product team on things we can improve. So, we want to we want to understand, how we can improve too. So anyway, the purpose of this course is to introduce instructional designers, learning leaders, business leaders, what collaborative learning is, what is necessary, what you have to unlearn in order to be successful. We talk about the AGES model of an approach to learning design, and it all leads up to a project where you imagine, a new program that you can design digitally. Okay. I mean, design collaboratively. So
it's designed, and I guess I'll ask this question on. So that's the topic of this course, but it's you say you get out of the technology lockbox. I like that. I say kind of the Stockholm syndrome of L&D that we have, right? Where we're kind of, so this is designed to help you get out of your box and say, look, instead of asking how do we iterate on what we're already doing, let's ask what would we do if we could do anything? Let's not kind of put ourselves in a box.
That's right. And the point wasn't to say, hey, all roads lead to Intrepid. We would love to help people if they do, but if you have Teams, if you have Zoom, if you have Slack, there's all kinds of things you can do. So just I'll give you a little bit of the experience here. So this was really like a mini course, as we marketed it, a mini course, 3 weeks long. And so as you enter the course in week 1, you actually wouldn't see week 2, week 3 content available to you. Okay. We're not.
So it's unlocking based on this. Going back to the semi-synchronous, which
that's right.
By the way, Susan really liked the semi-synchronous, right? It feels more inclusive, less alienating. So it's less of this kind of, okay, you're seeing the whole thing at once. It's more as you're moving through, this stuff is coming to light.
That's right. And yeah, exactly. So we had a 3-week. You kind of get the context of what you're in for. We're talking about here a very minimal commitment, about an hour of time per week, and this is an important point too. That we've learned over time is there's this idea of like seat time in e-learning. Like, what's the learner time of content you're delivering? And we just completely reject that idea. Like,
how long are we going to pry their eyes open?
Yeah. How long will this video last? It's like, that's learning, right? No, it's not. Like, you actually want to reduce that time and increase the amount of time that you're focused on reflection, application, and collaboration. So discussion forums, the missions, and so on. We use gamification for a purpose here to really track your progress. So you're getting points as you consume content, but more importantly, I love what JR, my colleague, did here. He gave way more points for participating in a discussion forum and for producing your field reports, which are your activities. So that's right. That's the way the mix should be. And then you unlock little badges along the way. So you kind of
you have a little fun with it.
Yeah, have a little fun with it. Yeah. And then, you introduce yourself. So we use the mission concept to introduce yourself. And so you all these folks have kind of gone in and said, hey, this is who I am.
So that's all built right in it. So it's kind of almost, it's in the tool itself.
That's right. So this is and I'll show another example of a mission a little later on. But yeah, it's just it's a little wizard that you can use to say, hey, where are you from? What are your objectives for this course? What's your favorite color? What chore do you like?
Icebreaker into the digital age.
That's right. Exactly. And then we get into the content, and this is where I mentioned earlier, you can upload files from outside. You can upload documents. There's a polling feature, in our platform. So I can open that poll and, how are people learning at work today? I would say they're learning from their peers on the job. And then you see what your peers are showing there. So there's some interactive features. Oh, let me go back to that real quick, because you can also see too that there are really simple user contribution aspects around this. You can like content. Not turned on here, but you could share content and so on. Audio file. Yeah.
Going back to this piece on some of these content chunks. So it's a hybrid. There's a bit of a blend between some can be authored in the tool, and then you can also bring in external things. So if you have other resources, are there limitations on that, or like, are there specific tool? And we don't necessarily need to dig into all the nitty gritty, but tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So we support, many different file types. We also support, linking and iframing into other sources. So if you have an enterprise video system, you don't have to, then you can avoid the content management of having it sit in two different places. You can iframe that in, you can link that in. So, we've designed a lot of flexibility. You can imagine with a system like ours, we have to play really well
Yeah.
with others, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing I was thinking as I'm watching this, is that it's like there's a lot of it can't be an attempt at being a panacea, because
Yeah.
that's not the way things happen. Okay.
Yeah. And I want just a couple of concepts here, which I think are really powerful. So I'm not going to play this video. I'll just open it up. But my colleague, JR, he talks about some of the things we need to unlearn. He talks about the L&D power trip, which is, of course, the antiquated idea that L&D is the font of all knowledge and the distributor of all knowledge and the distributor of all learning, and blah, blah. So he kind of takes that on. And then he does a really cool thing. He does a discussion forum where he says, hey, let's get vulnerable here. And he titles this one, "Forgive me, learner, for I have sinned." And he says, tell us about some learning you created in the past that you wish you'd done differently. And, he wasn't sure what he was going to get here. But, earlier in our conversation, I talked about the idea of the moderation, right? And the power of the facilitator, JR in this case, to deliver that higher order thinking, right? So here in week 3, he's looking back on week 2, and he's done some really cool things. He says around old war stories here, he said there's so many good stories shared about from the old way learning was created. He said, I worried that people might not be uncomfortable sharing their stories, but they weren't. And so he reflects back on that.
So he's still facilitating. He's facilitating
Absolutely.
through this. It's not just like this cold kind of isolated thing that people are doing. You're still going back to, again, some of the threats I think facilitators feel in this digital space is like, well, what is my role anymore? And what you're saying is he is playing an active role. He's still actively involved in what's going on with things and bringing that back and facilitating learning just in a different way.
He is listening at scale. He is identifying the popular discussions. He's listening and saying and kind of weaving the thread of the themes that he sees here. There was another one around how people applied or didn't apply the ages model, getting attention, gaining insight, so on, to their recent projects, and he shares the data. So it's really powerful stuff, and it's a really important piece. And I will say one thing is that sometimes we get a lot of people nod their heads around wanting to do a semi-synchronous time-bound experience, but every ounce of their fiber once they get this is like, well, can I just turn this on and like let it take care of itself? They're just so ingrained in the asynchronous world. They're like, no, that's not that you can do that other ways. That's not why you do this, right? You need to put in the work. You need to put in the effort to moderate and bring that human element to this.
Yep. Well, and one of the things that Gordon brought up that I think is an important part, just looking at kind of the layout of this, is that allowing the learner to control their time over, now especially, right, is especially important. We're dealing with 9 million things on top of our day jobs.
Yep.
But I don't think that's necessarily a new thing. And we already were straddling a lot of things. And to me, that was one of the biggest limitations of kind of the traditional model, where it was like, well, look, you only have one opportunity to do this in this very small window of time. And if you can't, that's it. And I think what, Gordon's getting at, and I would say we're both very much aligned on, is being able to actually space this out, be able to allow learners to find that balance of, yes, there are certain things you can do at your own pace, while at the same time, not just having it be completely asynchronous where maybe they don't even ever get to the end.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because, people are we're struggling. We've got, Christopher, you've got little kids at home. I've got kids at home. We're balancing.
Soon to be a puppy.
Soon to be a puppy. We got puppies to balance. There's just a lot going on in our lives right now. So I think it's a more empathetic approach to let people, give them that agency, give them that flexibility, because if it's just a scheduled thing with synchronous, then, that may not work for someone's schedule. Or like, we haven't talked about Zoom fatigue yet either, right? Like,
Exactly.
let's take a step back and say, not only may there be really important instructional design reasons not to push everything onto Zoom, but we've got a serious problem with it, as instructional designers. If we're contributing, we have to have some empathy for the number of Zoom sessions our learners are already sitting through, aside from the barrage that we're going to put on top of them as well. So, we just have to, I'm not saying that there's something, we need to move away from that entirely, but we need to kind of think about the context that we're operating in as well.
Yeah. Well, and it's something, I was talking about it recently at a conference about the fact that the empathy thing is huge for where we are. And it's a bit of an art and a science right now, right? Because we can easily say, early on, I think when everyone was first at home, there was this attitude of, well, people are at home, let's just have them do lots of learning. And it was a bit tone deaf because, you know what, people were balancing their kids being home from school. They were balancing these other things. And just add to it, your emotions and your feelings and learning are all happening in your brain, and your brain only has so much capacity. So when you're dealing with a global pandemic, when you're dealing with, the crisis and tragedy of George Floyd, and all these things are weighing heavy on your shoulders, that capacity to be able to learn a new skill or develop is diminished. And we have to recognize that, while at the same time not going to the other end and saying, well, people just are shot right now, let's not do it. Because the reality is, I've been in a lot of conversations where numbers are up, right? People are hungry for development right now because they're being challenged. They're realizing that, hey, you know what? I got a little bit too comfortable in my job, or I got a little bit too comfortable that I knew everything. And now I'm realizing maybe I need to develop more. So, as Gordon said, there is a lot of opportunity. I know his application of opportunity was a little different, but there's a ton of opportunity right now if we play this well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the last thing I'll show here is just the mission. So, like I mentioned, like that we're relentlessly focused on application.
Yeah.
And so every week, everything leads up to, what are you going to do with this? So this is about how do you apply the AGES model, the instructional design model. And so it's basically, like I said, it's a wizard. This takes me back to where I left off.
Okay.
But the stage here, what did you make? And you go through the related questions, and then you publish it, and it publishes as a field report.
Okay.
And that field report is what we saw in the early, when people were introducing themselves.
Okay.
And this is a way to drive social learning. People can comment on it and like it and so on.
So the mission report is essentially saying, hey, this is what we did. This is what we did. Now let's actually take and apply this. But instead of doing kind of a faux scenario, it's go back, because you have the beauty of space. Instead of saying, hey, you're here for 8 hours, you have to do it. You're now saying, let's ask some thoughtful questions that make you think about how do you actually put this into practice. And then, if I'm understanding you correctly, it actually is generating that into something that is then shared, that others can see and actually collaborate and learn from each other on.
Yeah, that's right. It's, when I think you hear the concept of learning in the workflow, which is ubiquitous. And I think oftentimes we think of that as a performance support. Like, I have this thing and I need to go look it up in the workflow, right? Which is great. That's one concept. We're looking at it, we have a different kind of frame on that. It's like learning the workflow here is like learning through doing. Like, you're going to actually take something back into your work from the learning experience, and you're going to connect the two. So the two are no longer different. You are applying in work and then reflecting and coming back and sharing and working with others. Okay. There's also a way to do this with teams. There's a way to do a grading rubric through project to get structured feedback as well from an expert or from from your colleagues.
Okay. Well, I have to say, Sam, it was great to take a deeper dive into it. I think the discussion alone around, right, because there is this challenge right now of like, well, it's in person, it's digital. It doesn't have to be either or. It's about bringing the best of both worlds together. And I think this was a cool opportunity to see one way to do that, and a great discussion. So hopefully everybody out there, tons of comments. I think I was able to bring most of the questions that came in, and hopefully we got all those answered for you. But Sam, I really appreciate you being here. This was fun. I told you
this was super fun. Awesome.
Right? I told you we would run out of time. I absolutely knew we would. So everybody watching, hopefully you got what you needed, and definitely ask follow-up questions, continue the conversation, message me about joining the community where we keep talking about this stuff. And thanks for being here. Enjoy getting your puppy. I think that's going to be a very fun weekend for you.
Absolutely.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. And we
really appreciate all the dialogue. Thank you.
Yeah. No, this was great. Okay. All right. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye,
everybody.
Bye-bye.